Ahoy there! Captain Benzie here, coming at you with another episode of the Destroyer Pilot's Manifesto, the series that aims to teach you everything you need to know about the various different destroyers in EVE Echoes. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the Gallente Federation's Tech 10 Algos II Assault. This destroyer is an absolute beast, and I need to give a humongous shout out and thank you to Reman, who is one of Catskull's premier destroyer pilots and shipbuilders. This video has basically the fit in here was suggested, tested, and indeed demonstrated by Reman himself, and what an absolute beast it is. Now, if you do enjoy this video, please let me know by hitting a like on it, subscribe to the channel for all things EVE Echoes, ding the notification bell and make sure you select all notifications so that you never miss an upload, and of course check the playlist linked in the description as well for more of the Destroyer Pilot's Manifesto. That all said and done then, today let's jump into talking about the Algos II Assault. The Algos II Assault is the Gallente Federation's Tech 10 Assault II destroyer. It's also the final word in the Algos line that started otherwise all the way down at Tech Level 4 with the Algos and the Algos Trainer. So if you've been flying Algoses, this is kind of the final endgame ship for you currently. And my goodness, is it worth the wait. So if we go up to Tech Level 10 on the Destroyer branch, here we have the Algos II Assault, and I've talked about this hull before. It is one of my favourite destroyer hulls. I love the look of it, that sort of cool trident look to it. I actually really quite like the Aliastra skin as well, the default one here for the Algos II Assault, that gunmetal in with that ruddy browny orange colour, just I think works really nicely, but it does get some pretty cool skins as well. The Serpentis Veteran, I do have to say, is ever so slightly disappointing in its sort of monotonous colour scheme, but hey, that's not what we're here to talk about. Let's have a look at the attributes and fittings. So the Algos II Assault does have 4 drone tubes. Now, whilst these can only launch small drones, there are 4 of them, which does kick out a considerable amount of firepower. We've then got 2 high slots, and there are no bonuses to the Algos, so you can kind of decide what high slots you fancy those to be, whether you go for missiles or railguns or cannons, whatever you want to skill into based on what you want the ship to do is an option for you. 3 mid slots gives us a decent amount of versatility in regards to electronic warfare, propulsion jamming, scanning, that kind of thing, and 4 low slots is pretty typical for a destroyer of this tier. It's not much in the way of tank, but it gives you a little bit of possibility of having some tank, some weapon upgrade modules, maybe a little bit of propulsion in there as well. It's a little bit of versatility, but being a destroyer with only 4, it's not all that much. You're not going to be getting any serious tank out of this. We then have 3 power grid rigs and 3 engineering rigs, which is pretty cool as well. That is a substantial upgrade from the Algos Command at Tech Level 8, which only had 2 each of those, so we do get a bit of an upgrade there. Now, the power grid of 64 megawatts, normally I would suggest this to be fairly low for a destroyer. However, the Algos II Assault, being a drone boat, doesn't use power grid all that much. I mean, heck, the 4 drones that you're going to be launching use a maximum of 1 megawatt each. It really, really doesn't chew into the ship, so we've got a lot of spare there, and it does actually allow us to oversize some modules whilst fitting. And oversizing a prop mod, something like a medium afterburner, is fairly popular with Algos pilots, as it does give you that little bit of extra top speed to keep out of the range of your opponent, and being an afterburner, it works whilst you are scrammed, so you can use it to outrange anyone who is scramming you, whereas a micro warp drive would of course be disabled by that scram. On the subject of electronics, a capacitor bank of 631 isn't terrible. It's on the higher end of destroyers, sort of that middling to higher end, and if you wanted to put armor tanking on here, but being a Gallente ship, obviously armor tanking doesn't use much in the way of capacitor, you'll find that this is probably more than enough capacitor for any job you really have in mind for the Algos II Assault. Its standard defences are also pretty tanky. 10,117 EHP, most of which is in the structure and in the armour. There's not quite as much in shield, only 2,400 compared to nearly 3,000 in each of the armour and structure, but it's still not a terrible amount of shield either. It's certainly more than the Dragoon II Assault would get, which is, you know, it's worth bearing in mind. You're not going to really focus on your shields all that much, but it's a decent amount that they have to cut through before they start hitting your armour. As we go a bit further down, things get slightly silly. Maximum lock targets here of 8. I still have no idea why the Assault II destroyers need to have the ability to lock onto more targets than my battlecruiser can, but at the same token, it's not a complaint. It's just, I don't get why they need this, but okay, I'm not going to complain that they have it. Never look a gift horse in the mouth, as they say. We then have a scan resolution of 619, which is middling to low. At this tier, small ships get a lot better than this, but again, it's a destroyer. I do actually kind of wish that destroyers had slightly higher scan resolution, as it would help them fight off interceptors and other frigates just that little bit easier by allowing them to lock on that bit faster. But again, this is one of those situations where it's not terrible, and the Algos II Assault is going to make do with what it has there. We then have a signature radius of 49.1, which is small for a destroyer, but still pretty large overall, and a flight velocity of 304 meters per second, which again is not going to be winning any races anytime soon. The Algos II Assault, in short there, it's a fairly large, small ship, smaller than other ships in its class perhaps, but still a lot larger than any other frigate would be, and it's nice and slow as well, so you're not really going to be speed tanking all that well with this. As we come a bit further down though, you'll see warp speed of 5.0 AU per sec is pretty good for a destroyer. A lot of them tend to be slower than this, allows you to relocate and move around space that little bit faster, which is nice. We actually have a fairly small mass for a destroyer as well, of 1.6 million kilograms, but it does come with that hefty inertia of 2.4 times, so your agility rating here is pretty monstrous. This is a slow boat, and there is no real agility to this. You're not going to be, you know, like fighting properly anytime soon, but again, it's a destroyer. That's pretty much to be taken for granted at this point, I feel. If we look at the trait description, it is an Algos hull, which means it has a roll bonus of 12.5% increase to drone velocity. This is one of those stats that I think goes often, like, you know, a lot of people don't really rate the stat as high as they should. The ability for your drones to actually close with the target quickly is really, really powerful. In PvP, it means that they start applying damage whilst your opponent is still locking on. In PvE, it means they move to their target and start applying that damage that little bit faster as well, which gives you faster clear times. It also means that your drones are harder to hit, because a faster moving drone, well, it's going to be escaping the explosion velocity of small missiles, and it's going to be harder to track for turrets. So it's kind of a double whammy here that does really help things out. With those small drones moving at the speed they're going to be moving, they can be very hard to hit and very hard to destroy, worth bearing in mind. Being an assault destroyer hull as well, we of course have the obligatory 5-second increase to damage control activation time. Again, I'm growing on damage control activation times. I really like these. They're really beginning to grow on me these days. That means you go from a 13-second DCU activation up to a 18-second activation. And 18 seconds of near invulnerability is really, really powerful, either for helping you to close with your opponent or for helping you to get some distance from them. Either way around, it just buys you those precious few seconds that you need to start applying your damage or to get the hell out of there if things have gone wrong. But what about the skills? Well, first of all, we have Advanced Small Drone Operation. That gives us 35% increase to drone DPS, which again is pretty monstrous. You're looking at, what's that, 35, multiply that out there across the 5 levels, and you're looking at 175% increase across drones, if my maths is correct there, which is, you know, questionable at the best of times, but that's either way, there's a lot of extra drone DPS across 4 small drones as well. Means that these guys are kicking out a lot of additional damage. You're actually looking at 175% there. You're looking at nearly the equivalent, that's about the equivalent of 10 drones that this thing is theoretically launching at your opponent, just bundled up into 4 bodies. And with an additional 5% drone EHP, 25% drone effective hit points, on top of that drone velocity bonus, means that they are surprisingly difficult to kill, and they're going to take a few shots before they disappear, which gives you either chance to pull them back and send out a new drone, or just leave it there and your opponent's going to have a few seconds before they chew through it and you can be preparing to send out the next one. Advanced Destroyer Command then is giving an increase to Warp Disruptor optimal range, 7.5% per level, which of course is 37.5% at full training, and Energy Neutralizer optimal range as well. Now, the Energy Neutralizer one is a bit weird for me. I still don't quite understand why the Algos has this. The rest of its stats really seem to imply that this is more of a kiting ship. Energy Neutralizer optimal range of 7.5%, that full 37.5% still isn't much at all. You're adding a couple of extra kilometers on there, and for the most part you're probably going to be outside of that energy neutralizer range anyway, even with that bonus, so I don't rate that much. But the Warp Disruptor optimal range is pretty sweet. That means that a standard 30km Warp Disruptor is suddenly going a lot further, as you'll see later. Finally then, the 3% sensor strength again is, at this point in time, utterly wasted. I often get asked what on earth sensor strength actually is, and you can see here, it's there on the right hand side here in the attributes and fittings as well, sensor strength of 15.4, so you'd be adding an additional 15% sensor strength onto that as well. Now, in EVE Online there's a thing called ECM, Electronic Countermeasures, which essentially are an EWAR module that force you to unlock on your target, and the strength of the ECM module fights against the sensor strength of your ship. It kind of works similar to signature radius and scan resolution, but kind of backwards in that jammer is fighting the sensor strength to try and get you to unlock your target. Unfortunately, however, ECM does not exist in EVE Echoes, therefore this stat is useless. Ergo, that 3% sensor strength per level Advanced Destroyer command is also useless. NetEase, please, why do you do this to us? Give us a nice stat there that is actually going to be something useful. I'd love to see some, additional Webifier range there. That could be quite cool, or something that ups the armor repair, or heck, all kinds of different stats could be thrown in there. Literally anything would be more useful than sensor strength. Now, I'm showcasing this fit on Fulmination so that I could just magic up the ship and the parts that I needed to demonstrate it, and I could play with some of the figures just to make sure that everything was okay. Of course, that also means I'm currently on maximum stats, and it is worth noting that for the particular build that I'm going to showcase in a moment to work, you are going to need to have skills outside of your destroyer relevant skills. And what I mean by that is going into electronics and then into engineering. If we scroll down and look at cruiser engineering, you'll see that once we go into expert cruiser engineering, as we come down to the bottom here, this gives a reduction in medium missile and torpedo power grid need. This is not just relevant to when you are fitting onto cruisers, this is onto any ship. That skill just affects medium missile torpedoes. So basically, if you're looking at medium missiles, medium torpedoes, medium rapid missiles, and you've got Expert Cruiser Engineering 5 here, you're getting a 10% reduction to the amount of power grid that they require to fit onto a ship, and that is to fit onto any ship. The same is actually also true for Expert Battle Cruiser Engineering. You get another 10% reduction there, which means if you are flying battle cruisers or cruisers, it can be worth training into Battle Cruiser Engineering or Cruiser Engineering. And if, like me, you like to oversize your missiles on various different ships, then 100% having Cruiser Engineering at least up to Expert 5 does really, really help to bring those costs down. Now, you can still do this otherwise, using power grid rigs, but it does work that little bit better to not have to worry about using ancillary power grid routers. At last then, we come to the PvP fit that Reman has been showcasing to me, and this comes with a list of recommendations in the form of variously surprising kill mails. Seriously, this thing has punched entirely above its weight several times, and I love it for that. It's what inspired this video. So again, thank you Reman for showcasing this to me, and I hope everyone else is really enjoying this one. Now, this does look to be inspired by the Frosty Worm fit. We're using medium missiles in the high slots, but by putting this onto a destroyer, you're getting a lot more damage out of it, which is actually quite astonishing, the amount of damage that this thing can kick out. Anyway, let's actually have a look then at how this works. So first of all, in the high slots, we've got Mark V medium missile launchers. Now, you'll notice I've got a little bit of power grid left over here. Of course, I am at Battlecruiser and Cruiser Engineering Expert 5, which is helping to reduce into that as well. If you're not that high up, you probably won't have that excess power grid there at this point in time, and you may need to use other ancillary power grid routers into the rig slots as well, as you'll see later on. That said, if you did also want to go a little bit higher, coming out of Mark 5s into Mark 9s, or maybe even things like the Challengers, then you may decide that actually the ancillary power grid routers are worth it. Maybe you don't want the other rig slots and you're happy to use those rig slots to push your DPS up that little bit higher. And of course, that's also going to depend on how high your missile skills are for like how much they're going to apply to your DPS. Now, it's important to sort of ask the question at this point as well, why on earth are we using medium missile launchers in the first place then? Surely if they're that power grid hungry, we could just go for small missile launchers and therefore get a little bit lower DPS, but, you know, have that power grid spare. Maybe it's not even that less DPS, you know, depending on the skills that you have. Basically, it comes down to range. This has a 36.89 kilometer range on these missiles. Yeah, okay, it's only 53.97 DPS per launcher, but it's doing those at a range of 36 kilometers, which means it can be out of the range of anything smaller. Any shorter range weapons, you know, are going to be struggling to hit it. This means it can actually dance outside of medium rapid range as well, which if you watched the Frosty Worm video, you'll know can be absolutely devastating to be outside of medium rapid range on something you know to have medium rapids in a ship that is ultimately what medium rapids were designed to kill. It's hilarious and I love it. Now that twins with the drone control range here. You can see I've got 35 kilometers basically of the drone control range. You can add on to that with rigs as well to get that up to the 40k. For me, this just means I can sit at 35ks with those drones doing their job and with the missiles still applying fairly well at that distance. Now for the mid slots, first and foremost we have a Predator Warp Disruptor, and again this is getting bonuses from the Algos hull itself, giving an optimal range of 41.25 kilometers. It's just really quite nice to have 2 warp jammer strength at 41 kilometer range. It means it takes a lot of running before they can actually warp away if they've not fitted warp stabilizers or warp core optimizer rigs, and not everyone does. I know if you go Lowsec hunting right now it can be disheartening at how everyone seems to have like warp stability 9 or something absolutely crazy. But yeah, the point is, this is, if you're going up against someone who you don't think has those fit, it gives you a good range to actually tie them down. The second E-War module here in the mid-slot is a Predator Stasis Webifier, and again you could swap this for another one of the Warp Disruptors in order to get 4 points of Warp Disruption at 41 kilometers. That can be really nice if you just want to absolutely make sure they're not going to warp away. But the reason to have a Predator, and I think one of the benefits to having a Predator, is against other drone ships. You can screen their drones away, and if someone does decide to get a little bit closer in something like, you know, an interceptor or a frigate, they want to get close and into range with their guns, rather than you trying to sit at 35 kilometers and try to keep them there, you can use the webs to kind of keep them at a bit of a distance and, you know, apply that damage there and hopefully keep them in accuracy fall off, or even on the very teetering edge of not being able to hit at all. It's all part and parcel of that little bit of a trade-off, and here I genuinely think the Predator Stasis Webifier works just as well as the Warp Disruptor, depending on what you want to do. Now if you're going hunting on your own here, then of course an Explorer Narrow Resonance Scanner is going to be absolutely vital. This is going to help you scan down enemy ships and actually, you know, locate targets to hunt in Lowsec. But again, this is up to you. If you've got other ships with you that are doing the scanning for you, perhaps, you could swap this for a Warp Disruptor or a Web, depending on what you've gone for your second slot. Now, drones, this really comes down to personal preference. For display here, I've just put Federation Navy Hobgoblins in, because obviously they're the Galente Federation drones, and this is a Galente Federation ship, so it just looks aesthetically pleasing to me. But Reman, in the footage you'll see later, actually uses Caldari Navy Hornets. I don't think there's any major reason to go for one or the other. Obviously the speed bonus is really nice on warriors, how fast those things fly, but I tend to just choose a drone tailored to what my opponent is using. So I'll be using mainly acolytes for the electromagnetic damage against shields. I'll be using warriors against armor tanks for the explosive damage, and if it's sort of a middling thing, then something like a Federation Navy Hobgoblin or the Caldari Navy the Hornets, because they're kinetic and thermal damage. They still do pretty well against armor, and they do pretty well against shields as well, so you can kind of mix and match. Remember as well, your opponent does often fill the hole in their shields. So for example, if they're using a shield tank, they'll probably use an anti-electromagnetic screen reinforcer. So they've actually probably got better electromagnetic resistance than they have thermal, at which point the Federation Navy Hobgoblin really comes into its own. And the same can be said for the warriors versus Hornets, whereas like an armor tank will tend to plug the explosive hole with an anti-explosive rig. You'll find that they don't necessarily tend to be astringent in going for the kinetic hole, so they actually have better explosive resistance than they do kinetic, at which point the Hornets can cut through that. It's very much either way. If you're a drone pilot, you should already know what I'm talking about. For the low slots then, I've gone for a GISTI C-type small micro warp drive. Again, this is just to give us the extra bit of boost and speed to keep at the range we want and keep our opponents away from us. A damage control unit hooks into those bonuses, gives us a nice 8.64% increase to all of our resistances across the board standard, activate it for a massive amount of resistance for 18 seconds, followed by 2 Nestworm drone damage amplifiers, weapon upgrade modules, static increase to DPS, and again you can activate them for that little bit of an extra push. Now you'll notice that I've gone for top tier modules across the board there. Again, this is another way that if you don't quite have enough power grid to do this fit perfectly, and you don't want to go for ancillary power grid routers, and you maybe don't have as high enough skills as I do in battle cruiser or cruiser engineering, you can drop, for example, the GISTI C-type small micro warp drive all the way down to heck, a Mark 5 micro warp drive still gives you a really nice speed increase, but uses considerably less power grid. There's all kinds of little tweaks you can do here and there, just modify the quality of some of your modules in order to help get the missiles that you want in. Now, for the nano core here, in the footage, Reman is running a Monsoon 2. I couldn't find the code for Monsoon 2, so I've put an Algos II veteran core on here, just because, heck, if you're going to be flying one of these and you really enjoy it, this is kind of the nano core I would ultimately recommend if you don't have any of the Monsoon 2 cores. Go for drone DPS for that extra bit of firepower there as well, and just gives a really, really nice little effect. For the rigs, again, here we've gone for standard drone DPS setup of firepower and 2 drone speed augmenters. On the other side, a single ancillary power grid router 3 is all that I required. You might need a second one. Reman has then put in auxiliary thrusters for flight velocity into the other of the engineering rigs there, just to give us that little bit of extra bonus velocity. You'll see that our navigation standard here, cold speed of 562.4, is pretty fast for a destroyer. By the time we add that micro warp drive on, we can actually get some pretty nice top speeds out of this. What really impresses me about this fit as well is the fact that that capacitor can keep going with everything here running for 5 minutes and 36 seconds, at which point you really should be disengaging if you haven't already killed them at that point. So, I don't know, to me that's ridiculously cap stable for a PvP-centric ship like this, and it certainly showcases in the footage, which we're going to have a look at now. So let's go and actually watch Reman kill some cool ships using the Algos II Assault. I do apologise here for the difference in video quality. Obviously, Reman is recording, I think, at 720. I tend to output at 1080. Anyway, here we can see that Reman has scanned down and spotted a Rokh. Of all ships, a Rokh in an anomaly. He's jumped in, he's locked onto it, and he is now powering his way close. You can see he's got the orbit there set at 33 kilometers, which is inside both the missile and the drone control radius, and he's now taken a hit from the Rokh. He puts the DCU on there. Obviously, a Rokh is a very long-range ship, and it uses large weapons. It's going to do a lot of damage if it can hit with those, and Reman knows this. He needs to close that gap quickly, which is why the micro warp drive is working. Now that he's in range, all 4 of those drones get sent in, and we wait until they actually start dealing some damage before he starts doing anything else. Now we are in that orbit. We're actually starting to orbit now around there. The drones are applying their damage, so now Reman can activate his first drone damage amplifier, and you'll see that that now is starting to do a bit more damage to the actual ship itself, and it's pulled through the last bits of shield, and we're now down into the armor tank. Obviously, the Rokh is a battleship. It has a lot of tank, and Reman, I think, has just activated his second drone damage amplifier there in order just to get that little bit of extra DPS and start cutting through that armor. Obviously, it's a Caldari ship, so it's got bigger shields than it does armor, so it's going to take longer to go through the shields than it will to go through the armor. Interestingly enough, he's now spotted that there are 2 drones out there. Those drones are keeping strong range, though, from Reman himself. I don't know if our pilot, who is piloting this Rokh, if he hasn't really considered sending the drones in after Reman, or if those drones just aren't keeping up, but he hasn't needed to activate the Webifier anything, just the missiles and those drones are going to work on this Rokh and pulling it down. And yeah, okay, there we go, a little bit of damage onto Reman. He just got the low shield warning, but the Rokh is now probably just about to start getting low armor warnings, and quite frankly, yeah, you can see that this is not going particularly well for him. There in local is a cry for help. Unfortunately, it's nearly an empty system. I don't think there's anyone coming to his rescue at this point in time, and that damage control unit as well is about to come off cooldown. The drone damage amplifier has just come off cooldown, so Reman can activate that again and keep going. There was also a brief period, I think, where the Rokh itself, I don't know if that was the Rokh or if it was one of the rats, was applying a weapon disruptor there to Reman, but obviously that's doing nothing to him either. Now we're into that hull tank, and yeah, it's not looking good for this Rokh now. That's going down, that's gone down like a stone. The damage ticks on this there. Some of those hitting for 2,000 with the missiles. The drones are chewing off anywhere between 200 and 500. Actually even more than that in certain cases. It's really not looking good for this Rokh pilot at this point in time. That's a big ship. That is an expensive ship to be losing to a destroyer, and I love it. I love to see this kind of stuff. That is massively, the Rokh is massively punching above its own weight there. And that looks like it's actually got an armor repairer running. I think the Rokh has an armor repairer fit, and I know that a lot of people might be watching this and laughing, well, a shield tank ship with an armor rep, you know, this guy deserves to lose it. It's not that uncommon for, like, battleship pilots to fit these kind of things as well, just as a way of stopping you paying ridiculous costs if you take a bit of damage into your armor. Just, like, fit the armor repairer before you dock up at a station, rep up until you're full, then dock up to avoid the repair costs. It's not uncommon at all, I don't think. But it's not doing enough. We lost one drone. Again, I don't know if that was, you know, to one of his drones or to him himself, but there it goes. There is the Rokh, destroyed. Reman goes into that wreck to go and loot it, and the video loops from there. Excellent. I love that kill so much, but let's have a look at another one. This time around, Reman is launching in on a Drake. So again, he's going after Frosty's crown here of can I take out a Drake with this ship? And I think having just seen a Rokh get taken out, the answer is a resounding yes. But we'll see how this one goes. Mark Big Tech's in his Drake there, along with an infiltrator drone. Let's see what happens. Obviously here, Reman again has spotted that he needs to close that gap quickly. He's at considerable range, but he gets to the 30 kilometers, no trouble at all, activates his weapons, the warp disruptor is on. One of the drones, yep, takes a little bit of time there to decide to join its brothers and sisters in the fight, but it does eventually get in there. Now we can see Reman is in a comfortable orbit around about the 30 kilometer mark, and is just chewing through that Drake's shields with the Caldari Hornets. In fact, he's just going to adjust his orbit by the looks of things to make sure that he's not getting slingshotted or pushed in any way there. Just keeping an eye on things. Looks like he's actually going to come in a little bit closer just to make sure that everything's okay. There we go. That drone, again, I don't know if the drone, if Mark Big Tech's here is using that drone and trying to get it to kill off Reman's drones one by one. It would be much better being sent after Reman himself, although, again, I don't think it would survive particularly long, and Reman could probably just screen it and ignore it. But there it goes. Down goes the Drake. What a kill. Drakes are one of those ships that are just so often used to actually, you know, kill frigates and destroyers because they've got the so many medium rapid missiles in there. It's so hilarious to watch one of these go down. Sorry, I don't mean that against our pilot there. I know it must suck to lose your Drake. Nice amount of loot there. Reman, excellent kill. I like seeing destroyers and frigates punch out ships much larger than them. Now, obviously, Reman just needs to get away to safety, which he does nice and comfortably there. Beautiful kill. Just waiting for the kill mail to appear, and there again, the video has looped back around. Now, this video is actually being added in post. I was getting ready to upload and put this video out when Reman messaged me with a good old wait. I've got another bit of footage for you, and my goodness, having watched this one, I just think this one is insane and well worth it. Yes, That right there is a Tempest. So he's scanned down a Tempest and he's decided he's going to try his luck at it. Now he's come in at 0, landed pretty much right on top of the Tempest, and is now going to proceed to do his usual orbit, which again, at the speeds that the Algos II Assault can maintain and get up to, I mean, crying out loud, this is a very hard target to hit, especially for something that's using large cannons. Large autocannons are still actually going to struggle. It's a 30-kilometer range that Reman is aiming for here. Yes, okay, he's got a bit of bloom from the micro warp drive, obviously reduced by the hull. But the speed that he's going, plus the fact that he's outside of web range, actually counteracts that additional signature bloom, and those turrets are really going to struggle to get him. And you can actually see that he took a little bit of damage on the way in there, like as he was setting up his orbit. A little bit of damage has been taken, but really not all that much. I also love, I've just noticed in chat, someone has called out that he's there in an interceptor, and he's like, no, I'm not in an interceptor, and they're like, oh, my bad. Then he's jumped in here and is now proceeding to try his luck on a Tempest. Oh man, the guts of this. But so far, it seems to be working. We are in a good orbit here around the Tempest. Yes, okay, that tank is proving difficult to break, and if it doesn't suddenly collapse, I may skip ahead a little bit on this. You can see both drone damage amplifiers there were activated in order to try and get a bit of damage. As a bit of an aside, it's actually rarely useful to activate both weapon upgrade modules at the same time. If you can burn it down in the time that it's going to take for those two weapon upgrade modules to complete their activation, then yeah, sure, it's going to be the best way to do it. So if you've got, say, 30 seconds of the weapon upgrade module, then yeah, if you can kill that target in 30 seconds, adding both of them together is going to do that nice and quickly. If, however, like here, the target is going to survive longer than the weapon upgrade module's activation time, it is mathematically superior to basically activate one, and when it finishes activating, activate the second one. That way you are getting, it's the way to look at it is you're kind of getting a 60% boost over double the duration, whereas compared to a 100% boost over a much shorter duration. Mathematically, it works out superior to do them one after the other due to the stacking penalties. Anyway, Reman is really struggling to get through this tank here. That's a lot of, the shield extender running there. It's going to take a bit of time. I am actually going to scrub this one ahead and see what happens here. And crikey, 11 minutes of kill timer. No one else has jumped in though, and he's about to get into armor. There we are. No, not quite. The extender still gets it. We're at 8 minutes in, but we're now into the Tempest's armor, and that is really now beginning to chew. Obviously, Tempests have better shield than they do armor, and here as well, Reman is using kinetic drones, using the Mark 9 Caldari Hornets. They are doing kinetic damage. Kinetic damage is better against armor than it is against shield. So at this point, they are chewing and doing bigger hits against that Tempest's armor tank. Interestingly enough as well, over the length of this fight, you can see that actually Reman's shield has nearly fully restored itself, which is it's quite interesting to see that. That's, yeah. There we are. We're coming down to hull now. We're about to get this Tempest down to hull. This Tempest must have called for help at this point. Like, he's in panned, so there's got to be a cry for help at this point. Someone is going to be on their way. I'm amazed. 27 people in system, and no one is, no one's jumped in to help out. Like, what's going on here? Is Rocket 3438 unpopular with his co-pilots, or what's happening? Anyway, I'm kidding, please, I'm not suggesting that seriously. Now we're into the hull timer here. Yep, Reman's going in for the camera. Look at all that damage on that poor old Tempest. That is some serious damage there. I can't believe that we are now, how long into this fight? 9 minutes into this fight. And it is still just the Tempest. Of 28 people in local, no one has come to support, and that Tempest is about to go. Ah, there we go. There we go. Speak of it, we have a hurricane just landed as well. Is that a hurricane? Yes, that's a hurricane. That has just landed on grid as well. That is a significant threat now to Reman. If that catches his orbit and gets him within web range, he is dead. Although with how low that Tempest is, I'd be tempted to hold on. Is he actually going to hold on and get that kill? Is he gonna do it? Oh, it's so low. That shield extender's gonna run out, and there it goes. There it goes. That is the Tempest killed. But the question now is, can Reman escape from this hurricane? Now he is going to lock onto that hurricane to keep tabs on it. I don't know if he's doing that to jump in and go, actually, you know what? Let's take the hurricane as well. Oh! Oh, there goes the neutralizer. That hurricane is definitely fitted with a neutralizer, probably a large nuke by the looks of things. That has flattened Reman's capacitor. Bye-bye shields. We're now into the armor tank. Reman hasn't activated his damage control unit though. Why? Why are you not activating? Oh, he's warping away. And he gets it to safety. Whoo! Oh, that was a tense final moment. Oh my goodness. But why? Why not activate the DCU while you're trying to sort that out? Oh, excellent. Excellent kill. Warp to safety and warp to another point. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And look at that. Look at that kill now, 570 million-isk. Yeah, Republic large autos not capable of hitting it. Ah, brilliant. I love that kill so much. Really good stuff. You love to see it, I love to see it. We've got a destroyer here punching way above its weight, and I actually think this is a really nice use for the Algos II command, because oftentimes when I suggest doing something in a destroyer, the easy response is, why wouldn't you just use a cruiser for that? Or why wouldn't you use a frigate, especially an interceptor, for that? And in this case, I genuinely think that the destroyer actually succeeds where both of those would fail. If you were in a cruiser, something like a Vexor, Vexor 2 for example, you are larger here in your signature radius than the Algos II is. You're more likely to be taking damage, you can be locked quicker, plus the Algos has some really nice bonuses there just to help it survive in this situation. Yeah, okay, the Vexor 2 might also be able to do this because it's probably got enough power grid in order to fit those medium missiles in the high slots as well, but it's also a lot more expensive if you lose it. On the other hand, if you were looking at an interceptor, I don't think any of the interceptors can comfortably get to a 35-kilometer range, which in and of itself does prove to be a bit of an issue. Some of the interceptors are going to be great at going up against certain ships, sure, but I think the Algos II command here, knowing your targets and being able to go after stuff that you know is not going to be able to hit you, either because it cannot get the range required to hit you, or because you're going to be going fast enough for its big guns, in the case of the Rokh, you can kind of pick targets there. I think if we were looking at something like a Condor interceptor trying to take out that Rokh, it's not going to have sufficient DPS to actually break through the tank. Yes, I know we talk about how interceptors have ridiculous amounts of DPS. They do. We're not going to, argue that point here in this video. But ultimately, the point I'm making here is that the destroyer has significantly higher DPS to be able to actually break through a target's active tank, which we saw it do with the Rokh. We also saw it do that with the Drake and just punch through and kill these ships that perhaps something like an interceptor or indeed a cruiser might actually suffer and struggle to take down. Anyway, I've been really enjoying making these videos using a little bit of a community spotlight. I think it's a nice way to showcase other people in the community besides myself, and talk about how other people are fitting their ships, and just have a bit of fun. Also because I can spend hours going out and roaming for PvP and just fail to get kills, so it's always nice to have someone else who has just managed to get some footage inspire me to make a video that I can share with the rest of you. Therefore, if you do happen to have a really cool PvP kill, or a unique fit, or something that you feel could be beneficial to the community for me to showcase, then please do let me know. My Discord details are in the description down below. You can also come and find me on Twitter. Sometimes I'm even possibly found on Instagram, though it's a bit of a rare one. Better ways to find me are Twitter and Discord. Come across there, let me know. I would love to showcase you all in future videos, so hit me up and let's talk and have some fun. Anyway folks, let me know your thoughts and opinions on this one in the comment section down below. I've thoroughly enjoyed this fit. I'm going to be saving up and grabbing one of these hulls and taking it out for a spin myself. I hope it's inspired you to do the same. Let me know in the comment section down below. Again, humongous thank you and shout out to Reman for making this video possible. Happy sailing, and see you all in New Eden.